Welcome to Treysta in Conversation With. Listen in as one of our team is joined by a member of our community to chat about their professional, personal and financial life, including a key money moment. Here's today's episode.
Welcome everybody. Today we are in conversation with Siobhan Komander. Siobhan, firstly, thank you so much for graciously giving up some time for today.
An absolute pleasure, Mark.
Good. You and I have known each other for a fair number of years now, and I've shared trials and tribulations, shall we say, across that time period. We've had some highs and some lows, and I'm going to, in a moment, let you, I hope, talk more to that. Look, we find ourselves today just a week or two after International Women's Day. We really love to celebrate the female clients that we have at Treysta. We have influential ladies within our business, ladies that, are senior within our business, and we certainly celebrate that fact. And it's really nice to, I suppose, given the timing, to think about financial empowerment for women. And I think that's definitely part of your story, Siobhan.
Yes, I'd agree with that, Mark.
Good. Now, as I said, trials and tribulations, what I would really love to start with for our listeners is for you to, and we were joking prior to coming on air about how on earth you fit your life story into a sensible time frame. But if you wouldn't mind giving it a go, and we know the high notes that we would like you to hit in your story. So off you go. Do your best.
Thank you, Mark. Well, I guess my story starts from accidentally falling into a career of event management and experiential events way back when I was a whippersnapper, so only 2 years ago, really. But if I take it a bit further back to when my career started, I accidentally fell into the events game. APRA, I was working with a colleague on the APRA Awards and the Nordoff Robbins Foundation, and that really kind of sparked my passion for working on events. And then I moved to another company where I was given the opportunity at Sony to work on events and be the event coordinator and work myself into the ground for not a lot of money. And not long after that, some colleagues that I had worked with at APRA wanted to start their own business. And they thought an event management business was the way to go because I could be the talent. They could keep their jobs in the background while I was on the front line creating the events and working with clients to build the business. It's a hard graft building an events business. All the friends that you thought you had in corporate life suddenly don't know you anymore when you want something from them. So I was getting a lot of crickets on the end of phone calls. It was really, really challenging. And after the first year, 18 months, both of those business partners realised they couldn't leave their job for an events agency. So I bought them out, which wasn't difficult because we started the business with $3,000 on a laptop. And then I forged ahead on my own. I was lucky enough to be introduced to the then head of Google, who were at the time 3 people in Australia. And I was just me. By the time we'd finished working with them about 15 years later, there was 1,000 of them in Australia and 25 of us. So it had been a great opportunity to grow with that business, not without its headaches, that's for sure. The GFC being one, just when I got the business off the ground, got a few people employed, suddenly there's no work. Suddenly events are a luxury item. And even if anyone is doing an event, they cut out the middleman of an event agency because they can talk directly to caterers and AV people. So I found myself in 1.5 days losing $3 million off the books. It just happened so fast.
Wow.
It was, we're out. Okay. That was a very challenging time. No doubt about it. It was not long after that I may have had a life crisis of becoming diabetic. I had so much stress and so much anxiety that I had actually started to kill my body. And when I went to the doctor to say, there's something not right, I can't stop drinking cups of tea and water and I'm really dehydrated all the time. And she did a blood sugar test and sent me off to hospital. And at that time I said, no, I can't go to hospital. I'm sorry. I've just got some work I need to finish because there's just going to be me now. So, look, the journey of Xphyr has been an interesting ride. That's for sure.
Yeah, indeed. And I guess it was the beginnings of what I've come to realize, that you just have this natural resilience. Did that build because post Zephyr you had some additional well, first of all, you did a bunch of different things, did what you do, and you were, sort of thinking on your feet and looking at alternatives, and did a whole raft of things that probably,
Yeah.
fell in line with your diagnosis. So you went and got fit, and you
Yeah.
did a whole bunch of other things, and there was a building of, as I've said, what I think what defines your story is resilience. So what saw you through, and what challenges then were kind of in the next phase of the post Zephyr
Yeah.
world?
So, I mean, the consequence of the GFC really led me to meeting you and getting
Yep.
control of my finances, because I didn't have the financial security behind me to deal with the GFC. So I had to change my philosophy around money and what it looked
Mm,
like for me and in business. My parents brought me up to have integrity. So even after the GFC, I think I owed people, I think it was $200,000 that I owed to my suppliers. And I picked up the phone with a colleague and spoke to every single one of those people and put us on a payment plan so that we could manage it, so they could understand the situation, because they were also in the same situation of having lost a lot of their business.
yeah. Yeah.
So if we could all, as small businesses, get together and pay, keep the small business economy going, we stood a chance.
Yeah.
And then obviously, I also had to deal with the crisis of being diagnosed as a diabetic. I needed to lose 50 kilos, which I have done now, which is, it's taken me a good proper 10 years to do that. I did it the smart way, that I thought was a slow and steady pace rather than an
Yeah.
aggressive way. I wasn't prepared to give up. I guess there is some kind of inherent resilience or stupidity, whichever way you want to look at it. I did. I loved being in events, and I needed to also pay people off after the GFC, so I needed to rebuild. So I just dug deep, and eventually things, started to come back. Then we was kind of phase two of Zephyr, growing that into a multi-million-dollar business, in
Mm,
both here and in Singapore. Also managing my stress and managing the pressure that I put on myself, because ultimately
yeah.
it was all on me to bring in $1 million a month in revenue to
Yeah.
keep the outgoings and incomings operational, So
Yeah. Yeah.
I had to at some point make a call that actually the stress was getting to me a bit, and health had to be a priority. I guess resilience is just in my DNA.
Yeah, I mean, you're meeting payroll every month, and as you said, operating with integrity, and the pressure never relents, does it? You get through one month and
And
it's all been good, but the second month starts again, and the whole process repeats itself.
and often in event agency land, you are the bank for the clients. So you have to pay your suppliers before the client pays you. So it really is
Yeah,
about managing finances, managing the way things happen. And when you're juggling, a number of events every month, you still got to pay people, and you can't let that fall off your radar.
yeah. Look, I think that's without doubt the integrity issue is interesting, because I've no doubt that that's part of your driver. Actually, it's not wanting to let people down and doing the right thing,
Yeah.
and so on and so forth, and really kind of being responsible. And interestingly, sometimes small businesses actually behave better than large businesses, and there's
Yeah.
there's plenty of stories of very wealthy people that have had multiple business failures and certainly didn't act with the integrity when it came to paying suppliers that you've had,
Yeah.
or that you did. So good on you for that. If everybody maybe acted in the same way, things might be different sometimes. But it's certainly, I think it looms large in your journey.
Yeah. Thank you.
So Zephyr, in the end, you kind of put that to bed. Probably, what would that be, more for health and self-preservation at the end of the day,
Yeah.
Siobhan?
Yeah. Pretty much. I loved it until the day I didn't love it.
Yeah,
I loved it with a passion. And then one day it was just too much for me, and I realized that I needed to take some pressure off myself. So I started to wind it back, and look at a different model rather than having employees look at a contractor model and look at doing things differently. The operational costs of an event business are enormous, and I felt it was very difficult. In after the GFC, we would plan conferences and events a year or two out, and the timelines got shorter and shorter and shorter, and it was a lot of pressure to put on myself and the team to maintain that. So about 6-7 years ago, I decided to wind it right back. So Xphyr still exists. It's just more in a consulting form that I work myself on. And I bring in consultants and contractors as I need them.
Yeah, fantastic. And more manageable, I'm guessing. And also, if you consider the engine that was Xphyr when it was running at full speed, the difficulties, of course, that the pandemic would have brought a business like that, because as we all know, events just fell off a cliff for more than 2 years.
Yes. There was a moment, Mark, I will not lie, when the pandemic started, I thought to myself, oh, thank God I don't have 25 people. That was a huge relief.
Yeah, look, it's interesting. Like so many other things, I wonder if the events page to some extent will be rewritten, where we've obviously a lot of event organisers now, they run that digital version almost in tandem so that you can toggle between the two dependent upon conditions.
It's quite an interesting concept, though, because I think the underlying motivation behind events is the human connection. We all sit at desks, we all are keyboard warriors, but the connection that you get from an event, being out of the office and meeting people and interacting with people, is still a large proportion of how business is done. So understandably, in the model of online, when you're in lockdown and you can't go out, makes sense. But I think people are pretty eager to get back to an in-person scenario. I think the human connection is something we've learned coming out of COVID, how important it is.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And it's just another illustration of how people will see things a little differently going forward. Again, pre-recording, we were talking about your business plan and how, we sort of look at some of the risk events that might come in to derail what we're doing. But, you just can't see things like the GFC and you can't see things like the pandemic. But given that we've now had these two very significant events within 15 years of each other, I'm wondering whether going forward, as people are writing the risk element to their business plans, that some of these things will be given a lot more thought as opposed to just a mere note. It's never going to happen, but.
Yeah. I think also if you look at history, between every 10, 12, 14 years, there is some kind of economic shakeup that happens. No one can necessarily know what it is, but I've noticed that there is a pattern over a 10, 12-year period that something triggers a big shakeup in business.
Yeah, absolutely. That takes us to what, Treysta, we refer to as money moments. They're varied. They can take many, many forms. But every single person that's an adult has had a money moment, from the very early ones when we're 18 and you need to go and, insure your first car and you're thinking, how on earth am I going to get the money together to do this, through various events in life. But usually, there comes a point where one or two start to dominate the landscape. And for you, I suppose the difficulty in recovering from the GFC, because of building up the level of depth in a business that allows you to financially survive an event like that, led you to really taking a different view about the way you think about financial control and remaining in a good position. So I want to talk us a little bit through how that difficult recovery led to your money moment, which is, geez, I've just got to take control here and take a slightly different view of my financial affairs.
Yeah, I think the GFC was such a shock. I'd been surviving on nothing for a few years, building Xphyr up. And I had just got to the point where, okay, I was drawing a decent salary. I was feeling good about the business and where we were headed. What I hadn't thought about was long-term financial planning for myself and my family and what that looks like. I had just bought my first apartment to support my mum. She needed somewhere to live. My mum has not had the best of luck with accommodation over the years. There's been several financial episodes in my family that have not resulted in a great happy ending for her, and I was absolutely beside myself that once again she would be find herself without a place to live. That was frightening to me.
Yeah.
So my money moment then was, okay, I need to plan for the future better. I need to dig deep and get us out of this hole, which is fine. I will do that. And then I need a plan of how I can to future proof myself in some ways. I mean, I don't think you can necessarily do everything all at once, but if that's not my skill, I need to find people who have the skills, which is how I ended up finding you. That I needed some help to build my financial wealth, to have that security and protection, that if I lost my job, if there was no work at Xphyr, that I had resources and something to fall back on to provide myself and my family with some security and safety. So beyond just paying debts off was then, what does recovery look like? What does the future look like for unknown events that happen in the future? And let me tell you, thanks to you and the team at Treysta, when I had a brain hemorrhage a couple of years ago, I was so grateful that past Siobhan had invested her time and had the wisdom to get someone on board to help me through, because I was able to not work for several months and be financially okay. So
Yeah.
I think that was ultimately my money moment, realizing that there's only me to rely on, and I have to do that for my own future.
Yeah, it's a remarkable tale, really. You're going through that period and again showing these, rather incredible levels of resilience where I'm sure, many others would have given up way more easily. And it's a testament to you that you did not, and that you come through and you continue to thrive, which is fantastic to see. And we merely look on from the side and offer support, but the greatest effort, of course, came from within. But I think it's really fascinating taking a peek into your family, and thank you for allowing us to do that today, because for us, seeing a financially independent, strong female that does take responsibility financially, that is really about not putting yourself in the place that your mum found herself, isn't it?
It is. It is in many ways, different generation.
Yeah, of course.
My mum didn't great money. She was a secretary, which she loved, but there was no real planning for her. Super wasn't really a thing until
Yeah, that's right.
till almost the end of her career. And I guess when my mum found herself separated from my dad, she didn't really have any resources.
Yep.
And, I don't want to work till I'm 75 like my dad is.
Yeah.
Bless his heart. I want to be traveling the world. And,
Yeah.
To some degree, you have to put yourself first and put your future, have some clarity around that. And then you can help everyone else. It's the old airline adage, put your own mask on first and then you can help others.
Yeah, look, as you know, we have a values-based process which we take our clients through, and it really helps us understand their drivers. It also reveals other things. I mean, one thing that we often get is a value statement which reads something along the lines of support and protect those that I love.
Yeah. Sure.
Now, it seems a fairly obvious, kind of basic human response to anyone that has, close family members. It comes quite naturally to think about protecting and supporting them. The problem is that often you've got to have the finances to be able to do that. You've got to be, and that's the difficult part. I mean, sometimes without the financial wherewithal, you can protect emotionally sometimes,
Yeah.
but you can't protect financially unless you've put yourself in a position that enables you to do that. So we often, have to help clients understand the financial repercussions of helping a loved one. You and I have had many conversations around that, and
Yes.
it's but that's fine, because what we've been able, I hope, to do with you is to some extent to help you understand the financial repercussions of the help that you
Absolutely.
provide your lovely mum, and that enables you to make good decisions around that, knowing that yourself, that you will be comfortable in time and do the things that you want to be able to do as well.
That's right. And I think it does come back to your point there about the values basis. You take the time to understand what my values are, and I can't have my mother living out on the street. I can't do
Sure.
it.
That's right.
I don't want to be that person on 60 Minutes.
Yeah, you don't want to be playing the big bad landlord when mum's the tenant. That's a fact.
No. It comes down to also, it's not about necessarily the zeros on the bank account that make the difference for me. It's about making sure that the people I love are looked after. And
yeah, look, there's no doubt. I mean, we talk about an emotional return on money as well as a physical one. And that the emotional return can play out in many different ways, but there's definitely, there's a wonderful emotional return that you get from the money that you invest looking after mum.
absolutely.
Yeah.
MasterCard have it right. It's priceless. The peace of mind that you get is priceless.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. I think sometimes people do underestimate. We all know the emotional return that we get when we help somebody, and it could be of something very basic like helping to get something down from a high shelf in a supermarket for
Yes.
an older person.
Do that regularly, do you, Mark?
Probably not being a 5 foot something or the other, but it's probably not my strength. But on occasion, when I come across a particularly short old lady, I can step in. But we do, that you always have a sense, even if it's helping somebody with directions, it gives you a nice feeling, fuzzy feeling for a period of time. And we extend that these days, with helping people invest with a social conscience as well, which is something that we're doing a lot of work on. And it kind of, it's removed from obviously the example with your mum, but it's the same thing. It's people being able to invest money and getting an emotional return as well as a physical one.
Absolutely.
And I think that's super important, and really is something that I think people, once they start to sense that, it becomes self-fulfilling and it becomes part of enjoying the journey.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, good. All right. Well, look, we did the whistle-stop tour of most of your life, but just tell me a little bit more about your running at the moment and your half marathons and all that sort of stuff. So just give us a quick update on where you're at with that.
Sure. So in 2019, I thought it would be, I wanted to lose the last of the 10, 15 kilos that I was on the path to losing after diabetes, which is no mean feat when you've got diabetic medication, let me tell you.
Yeah, that's right.
Thank goodness there's been some changes in that in recent years. But I thought it'd be a good idea to take up running. So couch to 5K, here I come. And I was out doing one of those with my my dog out in the park. And I was looking down to see where he was. And I just thought I'd been hit in the back of the head with a baseball bat. Thought I'd pulled a muscle in my neck. And then the next thing I knew, I was on the ground and someone was asking if I was okay. And not quite sure how I got there, but stood up and then had no feeling in my right leg. It was like there were no bones in my leg. Soldier on.
Wow. Soldier on. Wow.
Went to the cafe and the lady at the cafe said, "Oh, Dal, you don't look great." I said, "Yeah, I don't feel great." Drove myself home, and then the coffee came right back up immediately, and I had the worst migraine of my life. Unbeknownst to me, I had a brain hemorrhage from an aneurysm that had leaked while I was out jogging. Then from there, COVID had just started. So I was also in the no man's land of getting help because COVID was a thing and nobody knew what COVID was back then.
Yeah.
And you can't come into hospital. And a whole series of things happened until eventually I had to have emergency brain surgery. And the recovery from that was long. It was about 4 months. I am so fortunate. I am 1% of people who survive brain hemorrhage without any long-lasting effects. So once the recovery began, I had just about running 5 kilometers. I thought, oh, what will I do now? Will I go to 10K? And a friend of mine proposed that we do a CanToo program for a 10-kilometer run. I foolishly thought, sure, I can do that. The mental obstacle to overcome that was enormous because the hemorrhage had happened when I was running. So there was a few hill repeats where there might have been tears flooding down my face. But then miraculously, I managed to run 10Ks, and I thought the enthusiasm got the better of me and thought, oh, I'll do a half marathon. And then, so I again signed up to do a CanToo program to do a half marathon just on a year ago. And 2 weeks before the half marathon, I was informed that I had to have more brain surgery because my aneurysm was reforming. To which I said to the surgeon, after 2 weeks is fine, but I've got to run a half marathon in 2 weeks, please. And he he said, fine, no problem, but we've got to address it in the next couple of months. So then I had to have a more invasive craniotomy surgery for my aneurysm, with the hope that it's now ended and this is the end of the aneurysm story. And I've been talking about my aneurysm for so long now, I can't remember why you asked me about my running, didn't you?
Yeah, I did, yeah. But I think that it's a lovely, albeit obviously an incredibly challenging time for you personally. But geez, it's a really potted version of who you are. You go into, you get fit, you get yourself up to 5Ks, this dreadful event occurs, and your response to it post that event is to try and run 10 and then to culminate in a half marathon. So if anything, Siobhan sums you up as a person, I reckon that's probably as good a job as anyone can do.
And I am now in training for this Sydney Morning Herald half marathon again after last year's brain surgery, just to make
Well,
sure
look,
I can do it again.
good on you, and all power to you. I'm sure you'll successfully compete and no doubt improve your time as well.
Yeah, look, I'm just happy to finish. Someone said to me, is a marathon in the future? And I thought, 6 hours of running because I'm really slow. I don't think so. I'm happy with a really slow, but finishing 21Ks. Thanks very much.
Yeah, well, look, good on you, and good luck with the training, and obviously, ultimately, the marathon. So, look, normally, one of the questions that I have is to ask people what their biggest challenge has been over the last 2 years. I think we can safely move on from that question, and on the basis that we've almost certainly just answered it. And look, it is interesting because I'm sure that these, often when you talk to people that have had life-changing events like this, they do talk a lot about the word resilience, and that's what gets you back. It's interesting that people that haven't had to go through such significant events never ever would be able to see themselves rising to the challenge in the way that you have. But I guess one message, Siobhan, might be that people can indeed work through some of those difficult periods of time and come back stronger.
I think so. I'm not saying it's an easy journey at all, but life has its ups and downs and its peaks and troughs. And,
Yeah.
I guess a little bit of life experience helps. Okay, I know that I've been here before and I can get back to where I was, or, I think it's about adapting and realizing that actually we have absolutely no control. So, so just roll with the punches as best you can.
I think that's sage advice indeed. Talking of advice, what do you think is the best piece of advice you've had over the years from a business perspective?
I think there's two in equal measure.
Yep.
The first one is, if you can, get someone to do the things that you can't, who's better at them than you are. So the first thing I did, the first time I could employ someone or, get a contractor in, it was to do my finances. That is not my strength. I'm a creative.
Yeah.
And so from the get-go, I had someone come in and help me with the books and with the business. I think that we all have expertise in a field. Play to your strengths at all times if you can. And the second is, don't employ friends and family. Took me a while to learn that lesson, not going to lie. Employed a few too many friends, worked with family for a bit too long. But it comes around to preserving your relationships, because friendships and family is different to work and business. And as a leader, as someone who runs the business, it's all on you, and you have standards, and that can sometimes be in conflict with employees and what their expectations are. So I don't employ friends and family anymore.
Yeah, both very good pieces of advice, which I guess ultimately, when you look back, you're pretty pleased that you took the advice and that you've essentially stuck to those rules ever since.
Yeah, absolutely.
What would you describe as one of the best decisions that you've ever made? Anything spring to mind?
Oh, one of the best decisions I've ever made. Gosh.
Could be life, could be financial, could be a,
I would say, I would honestly say stepping into starting Xphyr.
yeah.
I naively thought, Mark, after my first year in business, well, during that first year, I thought, I can't wait for this a year to be down the track because I'll know how to run a business then. Ah, the life that it has brought me through challenges from good, the bad, and the ugly is, I think, a really unique experience that not everyone has, and that has really allowed me to discover who I am and my drivers in life and my purpose. I think that's been an important discovery too since life-changing brain hemorrhage is having a purpose and driving yourself forward. So, yeah, I would say starting my Zephyr. That was
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? I often would describe success as in whatever shape or form that it comes, but actually, in essence, being the best version of yourself and not leaving anything on the table in terms of your intellect or, emotional capacity, whatever it might be, to be challenged in a way that's enabled you to really demonstrate your talent and to
yeah,
use that as far as your talent extends. And I guess without Zephyr or prior to Zephyr, that would have been less easy for you to have done, I'm
yes,
guessing. And Zephyr gave you the opportunity to really test yourself, didn't it?
yeah, absolutely. I remember one of my first managers said to me, "You'll never be a manager." And
Yeah,
that in itself was inspiring and made me challenge myself to be a leader when Zephyr started to grow. And at some point, I wasn't a great leader. I realized that I had 12 people employed and nobody knew where we were going. And
yeah.
someone had said, "You need to steer the ship." It's like, oh, yeah, of course I do. I would kind of just been on a treadmill. And so then investing back in myself, I was able to do that through Zephyr by investing in myself, helping the business grow as well. Those aren't things that I think I would have had the same opportunities to do if I'd been employed by a company.
Yeah, I think that's true. And I'm guessing that when you think about the things that the best decisions that you've ever made, putting yourself in that position and living that journey was something that you will always, I guess, be grateful for, even though I definitely remember the stress and strains of
Yeah,
the times.
yes, yes, I know that we've laughed, we've also cried.
Yeah, indeed, indeed, indeed. There have been some tears. But look, Siobhan, again, in summary, look, well, thank you for your time today and being so candid and sharing your story so honestly, because it's a very personal journey, of course, for you. Look, I think
Absolutely.
it's,
Thank you.
I really do think you stand as a testament for female financial empowerment. Your family really is a very good example of how, if you step up and you take responsibility, you can use that responsibility and some of that success to help other members of your family. It doesn't really matter what gender you are. I think that's a very, very important story that comes out of your financial position. So long may that continue.
Also, Mark, just on that note, I
Yep.
hadn't realized until I had my brain hemorrhage. You can't take it with you. There's no point in building all that wealth and building
Yeah.
that you can't share it with people.
Yeah, that's
It's
really good
really,
point.
it's not going with me.
Yeah, look, thank you for making that point. Again, it's something, it's very difficult sometimes when people have spent a life of acquiring assets because that's what they're trained to do in many ways.
Yeah, that's right.
When that balance tilts and you're on in the spending phase, we have to work very hard with our clients to create spending empowerment, which is a whole other conversation which
But that's
we
something that you do well, Mark. Let me compliment you and the team on that because you do work with us on changes and life is a roller coaster and some years we've met it's been a desperate, dire, horrible situation in my personal life, and other times it's been incredibly successful and we've been able to roll with those times
yeah.
and be able to live. It's important to live with money and financial security, not to just squirrel it all away. It's important to get the most out of your life.
Yeah, it really is. And as you said, it's a bit counter-generational at the moment. But as I've said, the fact that you get to see your mum with a stable home and all of those things, that is a benefit and helps your well-being, I'm sure, on a
Absolutely.
daily basis. And so you're right. It's very important. How we spend our money is probably in many ways more important than the accumulation phase. It's all about, trying to live your best life and make great decisions and be prudent, but at the same time, make sure that you're not missing out, because as you very well know, that sometimes something can happen and many people in your situation would not have made it through, would they?
No, I'm sure not. And I'm sure others would have. It's partly what your DNA is, where your values in life lie, and if you're surrounded by the right people to guide you.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, I'm lucky to have you guys on board.
Yeah, indeed. And look, thank you for being, I always am very grateful that we have such lovely and fascinating, interesting clients. And you've been very gracious today. So thank you again.
My pleasure.
And we will no doubt chat soon, and maybe on this side or the other side of the half marathon. But either way, I'm intrigued to see how you get on. So we'll wrap up there. So thank you so much, Siobhan.
Thanks, Mark. It's been an absolute pleasure chatting with you.